How to build $1 billion company. We're lucky enough today to have Tony from Oyster. He's going to share his story with us.
The Oyster idea came to me in my previous business. We employed people in 45 countries, and I was able to witness the power of distributed work. There are 90 million jobs going unfulfilled in the West. That's $8.5 trillion economical loss. At the same time, you have 1.5 billion knowledge workers coming into the workforce in the next 10 years. We combine all these trends and you see an unprecedented opportunity to enable people around the world to have the world as their oyster.
How to build $1 billion company. We're lucky enough today to have Tony from Oyster. He's going to share his story with us. Tony, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps we could start off by telling the audience a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Simon, for having me here, and thank you for doing what you're doing, helping entrepreneurs for free. A bit of myself. So I'm a serial software entrepreneur, originally from Lebanon. I moved to France when I was a teenager, studied computer science. And 12 years ago now, I started my first company that was an API business for building communication applications that went to 100 million of revenue in the first 5 years, went public in mid-2016 by merging with a company on the NASDAQ. And then more recently, in January 2020, I started Oyster as a global employment platform. First and foremost, as a mission-driven company, removing all the barriers in front of companies around the world to hire talent anywhere. And I live in Cyprus. I have three children and a small dog. And that's about me.
Well, I think it's always interesting for our audience when they hear of an entrepreneur like yourself that's done such incredible things to kind of go back to the beginning. You know, it feels so unobtainable for a lot of people to build the sort of businesses that you have built and a business like Oyster. So take us back. How did you become an entrepreneur? How did it happen? I see that you had a job, really, business development jobs and sales jobs prior to starting your first company. How did it turn into an entrepreneurship journey for you?
Yeah. So, as you said, I started my career as an employee, and I was fortunate to be working at a specific time in mobile technology history. It was the beginning of the smartphone. Messaging was increasingly more important in our life. And I was working for one of the leaders in mobile messaging technologies. And one day they assigned me to a project called APIs. And the customer loved it. And I was really excited about the potential of that new technology. And I'm talking here, 13, 14 years ago, APIs were not a thing at that time. And but the company decided to put on hold that project for a number of reasons. And I left this business to do my business school in Switzerland. And there I spent the whole year thinking about that potential opportunity. I looked at it from the angle of marketing, innovation, go-to-market, in terms of value chain. So I got really obsessed with how do you use APIs to open up a new category of business that now we call communication platform as a service. And then when I graduated from that school, I had when you go to business school, you usually are programmed to go work for larger organizations. You're not really. I mean, there are now business schools that increasingly are investing in teaching entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs. But it doesn't prepare you for an entrepreneurial career as much as essentially real life. So when I graduated, I had the option to go work for a big corporation, but I had this business plan that was ready to go. And I read a book called The Monk and the Riddle. Essentially, this book is really about the concept of not deferring your life plans. Essentially, go after what you think you want to do in your life as quickly as possible. And this is where I took the decision that I want to start my own business. Although crazy could that be a decision when you graduate from business school? You have loans, you have debt, and I was fortunate to have an investor, one of my previous customers, telling me that I'll put some money into that business. And this is how I started my entrepreneurial journey.
Was it an easy decision for you? Was there not that moment, even with an investor, where you thought, look, I'll just get a job for now? Because I think a lot of people listening, a lot of the people that think about starting businesses have that, right? They have that, well, why don't I just work for someone first? They do defer their life. Was it an easy decision for you?
It was a very difficult decision for me, because I had this secure job offer after my business school to be the assistant of a CEO of a large multinational corporation. I went and spent a week working with that CEO. He was in Ghana, in Accra at that time. And the job was amazing. I had great salary. I had an expat package. And then I called my investor. I was in Accra on the beach, a beach called Bojo Beach, and I called my investor saying, "Hey, look, I have a job offer. I'm ready to go and sign this offer. What do you want to do? Do you want to invest or you don't want to invest?" He said, "I'm going to invest." So I came back to my CEO. I told him, sorry, I decided I want to start my own business. He said, "I always knew that you're going to do that," and so we kept a good relationship with the CEO. And then on the way back, even I had another doubt moment. On the way back from Accra to London, there was this Iceland volcano that broke at time, 13 years ago, and blocked all flights directly from Africa to Europe. So British Airways sent me through Dubai, and I asked them, "Hey, why don't you stop me in Lebanon to see my parents there?" So I spent the weekend in Lebanon because of the volcano, and I was spending with my parents. And I wrote this email to the CEO to tell him about my decision not to accept the job and start my career. And when I hit send, the email got stuck in my inbox because there was an electricity cut in Lebanon. In Lebanon it's a very frequent, it happens 5 times a day. I did not know whether the email was stuck or not in my inbox, but just we knew that I hit send and the electricity went off. And this is where I turned to my mother and told her, "This is what happened to me." She said, she's a very religious, she's a Christian, she goes to church every day, and she said to me, "If the email went out, which means you need to do this company." And when the electricity came back, we turned on the computer, and the email was out. And that was it. I was blessed by my mother to go become an entrepreneur.
I think fate is a very interesting element of life, isn't it? There is some interesting decision-making power in letting fate decide for you, which is kind of how I translate what you're saying there.
Yeah, surrender to the events of life and embrace them.
Exactly. Yeah, accept your purpose and embrace it. It's but it's a fascinating point here that you're making, actually, that if the email hadn't gone, let's say, you probably would have gone and got the job.
I would have went back to the CEO and say, I'm signing the contract. Yeah.
Amazing. And so you mentioned there as a point that I think, again, a lot of people listening, they raising money never sounds as simple as you've just described it. I think it's one of the hardest things actually in building a business, if you have to raise money for a business. And so how did you cultivate a relationship with an investor like that they would just say, "Yes, I'm going to invest"? It feels like, yes, there's lots of money out there. We all hear these headlines, but actually raising money, I mean, you've raised hundreds of millions at this point in your career for your businesses, but how did you cultivate that early relationship? How did that happen? How, for the listeners listening, what lesson is there for them if they want to start a business and would like an investor?
Yeah, your first check-in is what we call the 3F, friends, family, and fools. I'm sure, Simon, you've heard of that expression. Definitely. And so these are the first go-to people that you want to cultivate relationship with. And in my case, it was my ex-customer that I built relationship with for a number of years. And he was from the industry, so he knew what I was talking about. So that helped a lot. We didn't have family money. We come from very modest background in an emerging economy. So, and it wasn't a lot, at that time, if you think about it, back in 2009 or 2010, sorry, there wasn't as much money as there is today. So the check that we've raised was a 200,000 euro check to start the business, and it wasn't easy at all. It was the hardest. My first fundraise was the hardest fundraise ever. Let me tell you what happened. We spent. I went to Morocco, where my investor is, and I spent 5 months trying to educate myself on setting up a company, fundraising, starting to build a business at the same time, and be close to him so that he feel comfortable to invest. Because hey, I don't have a job anymore, right? I have to close this. And after a number of months of back and forth, he signed a deal. I came back to London. I've hired my first chief architect to start coding the platform, and I realized actually the money didn't come. So I called my investor saying, "Hey, what's going on?" He said, "Sorry, the deal is off." I said, "What do you mean the deal is off? I just hired, 150K pounds architects that I cannot afford to pay myself. I mean, I'm already out of business. I'm already broke after 1 year of MBA." And he said, "Sorry, the deal is off." I said, "No, the deal is not." He said, "If I ask why the deal is off," he said because there was a withholding tax in Morocco that makes the deal more expensive to him. Essentially, he cannot send me wire transfer. He said, "I can give you cash, but I cannot send you a wire transfer." So, okay, well, cash it is. The deal is not off. I'm going to come take the money in a bag from Casablanca to London. And I booked 10 flights of EasyJet. That was the legal limit back then was 20K euro in cash you can transport. So 10th EasyJet flight, London, Casablanca. I would go spend the weekend, take the money in cash, go to London, pay my architect, build the business.
That's unbelievable. I mean, if you were, looking at that from a transport perspective, it sounds like you're in the drug trade. It absolutely sounds mad.
Yeah, and actually, the angel investor, got maybe 150x return on his 200K when the company went public, right? I mean, like we're talking about, he's like the most. The highest return on investment of any early stage company. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Did you make him pick up the return in cash? That would have been a lifelong travel plan for your investor if he had to pick up the money that he gave you in cash. That would be,
what I'm going to do with
it. What I really like about that story is it's kind of it highlights that raising money isn't easy. There's obstacles along the way, but what you're basically, I think, teaching people there is that their obstacles can be overcome. You have to find a solution to the problem, and in this case, it's your investor's problem. You're solving his problem, really, or his issue, and keeping it all alive, which is impressive. As far as investor structure is concerned, I'm really interested to get into like how you grew Oyster. We're going to get to that. I just wanted to know, like, when you bring on an investor, and I'm sure at this stage, you've got lots of different investors on board over the years. Is there any learnings there, like personalities, for example, or aligning moral code, or is there anything that jumps out at you that the listeners should think about when bringing on an investor? Because 200,000 euros is not small money, but equally it's probably just as important that person could help you or bring value, or at least aligned with your values.
Absolutely, you have to look at the fit of the investor to your business and the value add they provide. So the fit means that this is not their first investment they make. They are not investing a big part of their wealth. It has to be a very, very small part of their wealth so that they're not stressed about the risk that they are taking. Early stage businesses are very high risk businesses. And you want an investor that understand the entrepreneurial journey and how volatile it is from the highs and the lows. You don't want them to be stressed out when there's a low. You want them to be supportive to you as things get difficult. That's from a fit standpoint. From a value add standpoint, it depends on the stage of the business. So early stage investors are more hands-on. Late stage investors are more financially driven. So depending on your stage, let's say you're early stage company, then you want to look for investors or investment firms that are specialized in that stage. They can help you set up the business. They can help you build maybe the basic first infrastructure of a business. They help you in things like getting to an MVP, minimum viable product. So they have these early stage infrastructure to help you succeed on your journey.
On your personal side, you've invested in a lot of businesses. So how do you decide what business to invest in?
The first filter is whether this fits my investment strategy. And it's really about investing in businesses that delivers impact. That's our angle. So we look at whether the business has a potential to do anything negative, and we block it immediately. For instance, marketing technologies. I don't invest in marketing technologies. I don't invest, obviously, in all the polluting industries. And it has to deliver a positive impact to the world, right? So this is kind of the first, I would say, filter, is whether it aligns with our investment strategy. Secondly, it becomes what other typical VCs look at. They look at big market, strong team, a product that is differentiated. So this is what I look at and I also look at who else is investing, because as an angel investor, I don't have the time or the experience to do any due diligence on these companies in any detail. So I do fall back and rely on institutional investors who've done that work before me.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about Oyster. So how did the idea of this platform come about? What was the catalyst? And then what was the process to make it happen?
Yeah. So the Oyster idea came to me in my previous business because we employed people in 45 countries, and I was able to witness the power of distributed work. Not only you can build a highly diverse and capable team, but you can also become the best employer for people in emerging economies. We would be the best employer for Diego in Argentina, and Mohammed in Morocco, and Mary in Athens. So I wanted to build a business that was, from one hand, a mission-driven business, because I came to a place in my career where I needed to align what I believe in with what I do, but also it needed to be a globally distributed business. And at Nexmo, we struggled. We spent millions of dollars building our own internal employment infrastructure to hire all these great talent around the world. And we failed to deliver scale for our HR team. And we failed to deliver a great employee experience for our team members. So towards the end of 2019, when I was ready to start a new business, I did not start by the what I'm going to do, but I started with the how we're going to do it. And it had to be mission-driven and had to be distributed. But I couldn't find solutions to how to hire globally at scale. There were solutions that were very service-driven. They were not software-driven. They were very expensive, very lengthy. So I realized that if you use software to reduce the barrier for global employment and make global employment as easy as local employment, not only you can build a new category in no time, but also you can drive massive impact on the world in areas of brain drain reduction and wealth inequality reduction. People like me don't have to leave their home country and leave their communities to find amazing job opportunities. And I got obsessed with that macroeconomical challenge. I mean, if you think about it, just to give you some data, there are 90 million jobs going unfulfilled in the West. According to BCG, that's $8.5 trillion economical loss. At the same time, you have 1.5 billion knowledge workers coming into the workforce in the next 10 years. This is the biggest shift in worker demographics since the Industrial Revolution. All these people need a laptop and an internet connection and a webcam, and they can work anywhere. So suddenly, we combine all these trends, and you see an unprecedented opportunity to enable companies to tap into the global talent pool and enable people around the world to have the world as their oyster when they're looking for a job. And this is how, in January 2020, we decided that's what we're going to do. My company not only will be a fully distributed company, but its mission is to help other companies become too.
When you describe this business, it's so obvious to me that it's needed in the world. But was it obvious as you started talking to people about it? How did you then, again, I think people really want to understand how these amazing companies get built from scratch. How did you go about, like you said, I love the point you said, you started with how, not what. But once you'd figured out how, what were the first few steps you took to make this real, this business happen?
Yeah, so to validate the need in the market, I had to go and talk to distributed companies pre-pandemic. So I talked to people like Automatic, like GitLab, like InVision, like Buffer. They were these emblematic distributed companies pre-pandemic, and I've learned a ton of all their challenges, what their needs are, and they all validated that a software-driven global employment platform would really turbocharge their business and reduce their operation overhead. So the opportunity was clear. In January 2020, I wrote this investment memo that I evangelized with few pre-seed and seed investors, and we were able to raise in 30 days our pre-seed round. Obviously, when you're a second-time investor, things go much faster. And then the moment the money hit the bank account, we all went into lockdown. So what we've realized that we had $4 million in the bank and a piece of paper, our investment memo, and the market is going to go nuts in terms of the demand. So we had to move really fast. We built an employment infrastructure in 180 countries, leveraging a lot of partners in the beginning because many governments were shut down at that time of the year. We couldn't go and set up our own entities in that country. And then we built a software platform that make global hiring as easy as local hiring. Last year, we were able to achieve a record of less than 6 hours from the moment the company submits the hire to the moment the person is ready to go work. And we expect that to go to below 1 hour this year. And we built an amazing distributed organization and a team that we ended up 2020, we were less than 20 people, and in a matter of 20 months, in less than 20 months, we grew to over 500 people, but distributed in over 70 countries, and with a diversity that resembled the diversity of planet Earth. And the results are amazing. We've had a 20x growth last year. We have an engagement level in the team of top 2% of all VC-backed companies. And we are very excited to be not only building a software company, but changing what work is and making distributed work better for people.
It's a little bit blowing my mind what you're describing here, and I'm just processing the enormity of it. There was an Elon Musk interview recently where Elon Musk talked about a population problem, and in a way he was talking about how that affects the lack of labor in the market. But I think a trick's been missed here. Your business is in a way mobilizing the whole world's labor force, because that's the real issue, isn't it? Is that there's not enough labor in America. That's part of the problem, but that there is enough labor in the world to service what you've just described as the 90 million jobs not filled, if you like, in the world. $8.5 trillion worth of turnover, I guess. But why is this not being done before? What is it? Because, do you think the pandemic was the right time for this? Is this one of those silver linings to a very difficult situation in the world? Is it actually finally given this idea that you're talking about the breathing room, and you just happen to be thinking of it pre-pandemic, but it is, of course, now I think even more relevant. Is that how it's played out? Do you think this? It's a confusing question. Maybe I'm asking you first of all. Do you think there's a population problem, as Elon Musk has described? And then I'm asking, do you think there is actually a labour shortage problem? And then I'm asking, do you think your business is actually solving both?
Definitely. I mean, there are some supply-demand issues in the market, as you pointed out. The global labor market is not as fluid as we can expect it to be. You have Brian Kaplan, who's the economist from George Mason University. He argues in his book Open Borders that if you remove the concept of borders from talent mobility, you can triple the world GDP. So So that let that sink in and see the potential of removing these barriers and making a global talent market instead of a local or a national talent market. And when you think about it, the shift that is happening, this demographic shift that is happening in the worker population, 1.5 billion knowledge worker coming into the workforce in the next 10 years, is going to make this an unprecedented opportunity to close that opportunity gap. And that's why we're here. Now, I have to admit and acknowledge that the timing was perfect. There was a timing. If you start a company like that 10 years ago, two things: from a software technology standpoint, maturity that was not as mature as now, but as importantly, the pandemic have made companies realize that they don't have to have a local hiring strategy, that they can actually tap into a global talent pool. Because anyway, people don't want to come to the office. People want to have flexible work arrangements. So when we started the business in January 2020, we thought it's going to take us 5 years to evangelize that distributed work is better for your business, better for your people, and better for the planet. It happened in 1 year. So that's where the luck for me is about time compression. That is what luck is. So we compress time from 5 years to 1 year in terms of the market size.
It's literally like I always think luck is a fantastic subject. It's a very interesting one. There's lots of people that don't believe in luck, and of course you can argue hard work equals luck. But I think it's also taking risk equals more luck and persistence. So I think what's really interesting about this kind of point in time, when you had this vision to do this business and you raised the money, did you originally have a timeline in your original investment thesis about how long it would take to convert the market to this way of thinking? And did it get blown out of the water because of COVID, or what was your initial prediction?
So my timeline was to reach 100 million of top line revenue in less than 5 years, in 5 years. That was what I was promising investors. That timeline has been compressed. The forecast that I have forecasted in my investment memo in January 2020, we did 8x that in the first year of operation. So there is 8x boost to our recipe because of the time compression.
Wow, which again is why, just reading the financial history, you raised 150 million in a Series C in April, right? Which is just unbelievable considering you started that same year. And that goes back to the fact that you just in the right place at the right time with the right idea and executed on it.
With the right people and the right execution, right? So we were very obsessed early on in designing a team that is here to be mission driven and is here to reinvent what work is. And everybody on my leadership team, except 2 people, have been hired through a thorough and extensive executive search process.
You did a tweet recently about having 500 people working remotely and kind of almost saying it does work. Do you find there's still resistance? I noticed in the media, for example, there's a lot of push like you should go back to work. The old office infrastructure that costs so much money in central London, for example, it's very expensive office space. If no one's going there's lots of people that lose lots of money. So there is a push to get people back in the office. But do you find that there's still an element of education even after all that's just happened in the last few years? Is there still resistance to this idea?
The people are very clear of what they want. They want flexible, work from anywhere options that makes them successful no matter what they are. And they're going to navigate, the top talent in the world is going to navigate around companies that makes them successful no matter what they are. We just seen the head of AI technology, I think, at Apple resigning because he didn't agree with Apple remote work policies, and his whole team probably will resign too. And this is very unique talent. If you want to find AI talent, they know they are in demand, and that's going to propagate across the workforce. And And there's a reason why we are asked to go back to the office, because we spent the last 100 years building these urban areas, these cities, that their commerce depend on workers commuting into the city. So essentially, we are being asked to put our well-being below the profit of localized businesses in cities. And that's not going to work.
Couldn't agree with you more. And as an entrepreneur, one of the things I value is the freedom to work where I want to work. And why shouldn't everybody have that? You know, why should it just be for entrepreneurs? You know, like it makes total sense. Humans want to be free, like you said, to be with our communities, to be with our families. Mental health, we're happier. And I see Google in London, in King's Cross, they started a project 4 years ago, building this massive office complex. And I consider them a forward-thinking company, and I think to myself, they should just stop. You know, once they built it, they feel obliged to use it. It just doesn't make sense anymore to do that. But I'm surprised when you see forward-thinking companies like Google still doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they're gonna lose their best talent.
I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? It's probably the best T-shirt you could wear for your company. You know, you want the best talent. You've got to think globally, and you've got to give people the freedom to enjoy their job. Let's say, you know, it makes a huge difference if you're not spending 2 hours commuting, and you know, you can be with your community and family. Do you see going forward? I don't know who you view as competition, but brands like LinkedIn, I noticed, you know, I think you work with them, but they should also be, I guess, supporting this agenda, because a lot of platforms like that are still location based. I know on the search, for example, the jobs come up as, you know, London based, you know, role, and I feel like they should drop that. I'm sure that's a conversation you're having with them, but it still feels like the infrastructure is still geared around, you know, it's a London job or a Hong Kong job or a San Francisco job. And that seems to still be the trend. But am I right? Is that something that still needs to be updated?
It does need to be updated, and both LinkedIn and Indeed are investor in Oyster, so we're closely with them. But we work also with a number of talent marketplaces out there. We hear constantly that the remote job category is the fastest growing category in the history of these companies. So not only companies are increasingly wanting to hire remote, but the application they get for these jobs is off chart. Airbnb mentioned recently that they turbocharge their incoming job applications by like 5x just by announcing their remote work policies. At Oyster, we receive 13,000 job applications a month. We are a 500 people company, 2 years old. We're probably going to add another 500 this year, but we cannot hire all these people, right? So we have 13,000 job applicants. These are people that are attracted by our way of working. It's a work style. You have lifestyle and you have work style that adapts to your lifestyle. That's what we're trying to achieve here. We're making work better for humans.
And do you see any parts of the world that, I mean, for example, Africa, it's for the last 10 years, I've lived in Hong Kong, I've lived in London, I've lived in the US. Africa is always talked as the country that's up and coming, you know, the place, it's ready to jump, but I always feel like it doesn't quite get access. Do you think platforms like yours are going to give countries like Africa finally the chance it deserves? There's so much talent there, for example, you know, like, but almost trapped within the continent. Is there any particular part of the world you see this talent being unlocked? Is there, you know, you must have some amazing insights into that.
Yes. So today, around 25-30% of our hire are in emerging economies, and we expect to continue to expand that over time. We're sending over $45 million of money flows from north to south. We expect that to be over $1 billion in 2 years from now. Essentially, we are becoming a major foreign direct investor between north countries and south countries in the world. And Africa is a beneficiary of that. It's a beneficiary because there is in Africa you have I would say an elite talent pool today that's being hired by these remote companies. but I do expect that to continue to go down all the other areas of talent in the continent as we prove to the world that this is a possible case for you. But also in Africa, we've seen an increasing level of startups actually being founded and successful and receiving VC money from abroad. So also VC investment has changed. When I was meeting my VC friends in San Francisco, evangelizing the idea of Oyster late 2019, they said, sorry, we cannot invest with you because you're based in London, but let me introduce you to somebody in London. As the pandemic enabled these VC companies to operate without meeting people, they said, well, we're going to ditch that. We're going to go global with our investment. And at Oyster, we've raised over $220 million of VC money without meeting these investors. We just recently met when the world reopened, went and had a social meeting with them. But 100% of our pitches has happened virtually, and that's a very good signal to the world. Money is being unlocked geographically, and opportunity is being unlocked geographically.
Very exciting point you're making there. Again, for my listeners, thinking about like, well, I'm based wherever I'm based, and there's not so much. Everyone talks about Silicon Valley having, the proper capital, and the world has changed. And I think you're part of that movement actually, and I think it's really interesting. The other thing I take from the way you describe your business that I want my listeners to pick up on is that you actually never talk about, the money you're making or the profit. You're talking always about the value you're bringing to countries, to communities. And I can feel the passion from you about how much that means to you, that you're actually almost like acting as a private company that's doing good, that's literally helping economies, almost like inward investment in people and economies. And I think that's one of the reasons you're so successful, I think. And I want my listeners to pick up on it. You're very purpose-driven. Has that always been with you? Have you always felt purpose?
So I started Oyster specifically to align what I do with what I believe in. And because I came to a place in my career where I needed that. I need that motivation, that focus for me to work the hours and that an entrepreneur need to put in. So that was the reason why I started Oyster. We just happened to be in HR tech. We just happened to be in software, because combining software and HR tech, I believe, is one of the biggest opportunities for humankind right now by unlocking this opportunity globally. But I'm not unique in that, right? I mean, there are some massive amount of studies that have been done on why mission-driven companies hire better people and retain them longer. Why mission-driven companies are increasing their customer win rate, because customers want to work with mission-driven companies. Why investors are investing more in impact-driven businesses. ESG, which is the asset class around impact investment, is the fastest growing asset class in the history of asset classes. So we're going to see a shift in how investments are being made. Maybe it's going to take 10 years, maybe it's going to take 50 years. I don't know, but it's happening, and it's happening at rapid pace. That money will be purposeful, will be invested with purpose. And that's what we did at Oyster. We are aligning our cap table with our mission. In our recent Series C, we had investment from the Salesforce.com Impact Fund. We had investment from Base 10, which is the largest Black-led VC in the US that reinvest 50% of the returns in form of scholarship in Black-led universities. So we are on that journey of giving money a purpose, and it's extremely powerful.
Well, I think it makes people want to work with you, first of all, because yes, earning money is important, but you're ticking actually two additional boxes that get overlooked. One is freedom. You're giving people freedom by the remote work model, but you're also giving people a reason to do it. I always have an issue personally with the education system generally across the world, but in developed countries in particular, because they always ask kids, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I think they should be asking them, just make one change in education and say to them, what problem would you like to solve? And I think that's the beginnings of being on the path to like a purpose-driven life and a purpose-driven business that then people, like you say, and I've experienced it too, want to work with you. It seems so simple and obvious, but it almost, I think it needs highlighting. But did you know from a young age that you had this purpose vibe, or did you pick it up from your parents? Where did it come from? Because not everybody's got that vibe initially. Maybe now they've listened to this podcast, they might hopefully. But did you always have this feeling in you?
Look, I believe this is not unique to me. I think everybody in the world has that place in their heart that drives them. Many of us can't access that because of the stresses of this world and because of this push for us to be seen as a productive part of this world. And that confuses us. So I did spend a lot of time clarifying why I'm here and align my mind with my heart to be able to do this. And I cannot be more fulfilled in what I do right now. And that everybody can access that. Everybody can look inside their heart and align why they are here, and move towards a path that is more purposeful.
Just a couple more things on my mind that I think my listeners will would like to know from you. I feel like you're a visionary. You clearly see things and you see ahead of time, as you have done with Oyster. A lot of people are thinking what to do next, or what to do career-wise, business-wise. What do you think of things like blockchain and Web3? And do you? A lot of people are talking about decentralization. Do you have any thoughts on this? Not that I necessarily expect you to have a brilliant idea for my listeners to go and do, but I just love your wisdom. Do you see anything in these things?
I see these technologies as they're going to happen. The question is how fast. So if you can find a way to make them more purposeful, that's great. But they're going to happen no matter. It is definitely an opportunity to create innovation and make a good return. But I don't know how you can combine these technologies with what the world really needs. I mean, today there's so many things we can do in this world that enable us to move towards a more sustainable planet, and I don't see how these technologies are helping. But I'm open to be proven wrong.
I think it's a very interesting point. And an ironic twist is, how do these virtual world ideas actually connect back to solving real world problems, right? I mean, if I just had some solar panels installed and I feel like I'm actually now, harnessing the power of the sun and reduce my footprint. And, at the same time, I'm buying, cryptocurrency that's burning up energy somewhere. So it doesn't actually connect, does it? It doesn't connect back to actually solving real world problems. I mean, maybe wealth creation is an element of that. I mean, it all has to start somewhere. Perhaps if people making money off it, then go do something purposeful with the money. But it is interesting to see the emerging economy. But I think something like Oyster, for example, I look at that platform and I think that is probably a very good case study to be a community-owned business one day, because it's the community mission that's so important, right? It's giving people that freedom. It's traditional, of course, to list these companies, but I don't. It's an interesting model to let the community own it and almost tokenize within the system. I'm sure you've looked at it.
Yeah, we're looking at some crowdfunding options as well. So to be able to open up our cap table to the community as well. That's something we're looking at.
Yeah, I opened an office up in Africa, and what I noticed there, again, getting to know that market, was that even if people wanted remote work, they still need money for a laptop, or they need the basics given, and so that a crowdfunding model around supporting people to get to work is a pretty interesting idea.
Yeah.
I guess just closing, I'm always interested in entrepreneurs' views that have gone and done it. Do you think entrepreneurs are born or bred?
They're definitely bred. I mean, everybody can become an entrepreneur. It's a question of taking that risk in your life, and there's ways you can create a better environment for you to take risks, creating safety nets, for instance. Always make sure that it's a reversible decision in the first, let's say, year of your commitment, because you have to realize that if you don't succeed, it could be a timing issue, could be a luck issue, right? So it has doesn't signal anything about who you are and your value in this world. But you have to try. You have to, in my opinion, not defer your life plan. You have to start now.
So much knowledge in your story, and I want to thank you for taking time out of running a very big company and doing what you're doing to share your knowledge with myself and the community. Thank you so much, Tony, for doing what you're doing as well by helping so many people do what they love, where they love. So thank you for that. And real pleasure. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Simon.
I hope you found today's podcast both inspiring and useful. And if you need more help, visit purposefulproject.com, where all the resources to help you start and grow a business are free.